I'll restart the recording and just continue to let folks in as we go here. So thank you everybody for joining today. This is our affordable rental housing monthly partner call. So just to walk through where we are, upcoming previews, some of the conversations for Housing Stability Council, and then hear what questions you have and do our best to answer any of them that we can. I'm Natasha Detweiler-Davy, Director, Affordable Rental Housing here at OHCS. So nice to be with you all here today. I am going to just, I think, kick us off with going through what our agenda is for this Friday's Housing Stability Council meeting, which includes a whole bunch of great updates on the upcoming ORCA process. And I'm just going to pull up my notes. Okay, so it looks like we've got us. Okay. So at this month's Housing Stability Council meeting, we have a few transactions of the 4% conduit space. We have kind of refinancing, reissuance needed for one project, Renaissance Commons. And then we will be bringing forward a slate of updates and strategies around our upcoming ORCA process. So we have our evaluation standards for this is the Oregon centralized application. And then we also have, underneath that, we have first kind of a deep dive on evaluation standards that we have discussed through at Housing Stability Council last month, and then also have previewed and developed those really out of engagement over the past many months. We also then have, let's see, I'm trying to think of what these questions that we've gotten. I know that we have gotten some questions about how we're going to implement location standards underneath that umbrella framework. And so we'll be sharing some more information about that in detail this week. I'm expecting that to go out so that we can go into more detail for everybody. I think, fundamental to the location standards, this whole ORCA is really trying to standardize and normalize how we are measuring and evaluating projects. And part of the location standards is making sure that projects are being located in a community that is able to support tenants to be, to have opportunities to thrive, and balancing that with the idea that we want to make sure that, community has ways to bring opportunity to their tenants as well. And so some of those are, for instance, if a project is not located, very near green space, if you incorporate play, a green space or a playground at your project, that would be part of that whole evaluation. And so I think throughout our evaluation standards, we are really trying to balance those pieces, wanting to make sure that we're really prioritizing resources to supporting tenants and also communities, as all communities across the state are really in dire need for housing. And so I think maybe I'll pause there. If you've been able to look at the Housing Stability Council packet, are there any questions off the top on the evaluation standards? Let's see, Stephen, I see your question in the chat. Clarification on funding, layering, possibilities, restrictions would be helpful to hear about. And so we are, through the centralized, I'm going to have a follow-up question here, Stephen. Through the centralized resource offering, through the ORCA, we're really trying to bring all of our resources to be able to access through one space and not have different ways of evaluating and investing resources broadly. And so I think there is the ability to layer state resources, but wherever possible, we'll want to make sure that we are streamlining that so that we're not adding erroneous need to stack resources where it may not be warranted. Certainly leveraging outside resources from local or other areas into the capital stack, private debt, and so on is encouraged. We are, whereas our previous NOFA process required that all of the resources were firmly committed before we made any commitment of resources to the project through the ORCA. As you are doing your initial applications, it would be acceptable to have other leverage in that capital stack that has not yet been secured, as long as that then is secured as the project moves forward. Do you have any other follow-up on that? Okay, great. Let's see. Then after evaluation standards, we are also then we have the one funding resources and set asides, which has a lot of the updated information. And I see the note in the chat, and I'm just going to try to pull up the link to the actual packet here. So if you go to this page, and then you can click the download meetings packet. This is the actual packet material link there. So yes, we did. So in here is the really high level framework for all of the resources that are leveraged into this. The listing of the available resources, which is what we used to call our funding calendar, but now it will be, when it's opened, it will be open to be able to access all of those resources that we have included in there. I think everybody who has taken time to, in the last week or two, to provide feedback and input on the subsidy limits. I have gotten responses from so many people on that and really appreciate it. I know it was a lot. It took effort to be able to dig in on that and really get to get us that input and feedback, and it was really helpful for understanding where we are. I think across the board, that we're balancing a lot of needs here in the subsidy limits, wanting to make sure that we have projects that are able to move forward, and also wanting to make sure that we can be sure to be getting the most units that we can from this. Based on all of that, we have updated the subsidy limit recommendations for Housing Stability Council. If I'm looking at that packet and that second link that I posted, it is starts on page 59. And so it has kind of also, as in response to the feedback, have recast the look of the tables so that it wasn't confusing people any longer. So there's a table for rural new construction, rural acquisition and rehab, urban new construction, and urban acquisition and rehab, and those are higher than the ones that were last circulated for public, for your response, for your input on these. There's a little bit of shifts here and there within those, but overall, kind of around 10% higher than what we had previously covered. And these are the subsidy limits for gap-only projects. So this is specific to projects that we have resources for to fund when we open the ORCA, which will not include the low-income housing tax credits. As we are embarking, after we have the ORCA open, into engagement around the qualified allocation plan and low-income housing tax credits, I expect that we'll have more conversation and understanding where subsidy limits would need to be established that are in leverage with those low-income housing tax credits. So this is really for the gap-only transactions. We're wanting to make sure that we have retained some flexibility, but really also need to be able to put limits into this so that we have understand what projects are going to be feasible with the resources that we have. I see the question about the packet, and I think maybe as people join, they don't get the chat. So the Housing Stability Council packet I just put the link in, and the subsidy limits page begins on page 61 of the PDF or 59 of the document itself. We don't have any low-income housing tax credits to offer on this when we open the ORCA. So I see, Seth, your question. So when we are opening our next 9% low-income housing tax credit round, which I expect for 2025, those would be brought into the ORCA. We haven't done the work, the QAP transition over, but we do not have 9% tax credits to offer this year. So we'll be bringing that back before the 9% is due to come up. And we are also right now not offering project financing to leverage low-income housing tax credits, the 4% side, both because of resource constraint and also because we need to incorporate into the ORCA structure. Let's see, Danny. So, oh yeah, so are we considering making funding commitments for projects that are using low-income housing tax credits but not wanting to close on those transactions this calendar year? And at this point, no, we are not. We are just offering gap resources, and so we're looking for projects that are ready to go with the resources we have available. As soon as we go through the qualified allocation plan, we'll know a lot more about how that will work, and we'll align that to understand when we have certainty around the private activity bond timeline. Let's see. Let's see, and Jesse, I see your question on priority for projects that use less subsidy limits, and we are moving outside of a competitive structure, so we're not evaluating projects against each other. We are evaluating them against our standards for funding, and then we will be, and then, having them within our subsidy structure. We will be making sure that we are, having the details of project costs within our underwriting process and in the pro forma down the line to make sure that we are doing that well, and want to make sure, certainly stewarding resources, but are not giving point priority because we are trying to not be evaluating projects against each other. Okay, so let's see. I see on the 9% low-income housing tax credits, we will not be doing NOFAs any longer, so there will not be a NOFA. We will be using the ORCA to deliver resources. And so I don't think that we have certainty when that will when they will be opened in the ORCA until we go through the qualified allocation plan process. Traditionally, those are resources that we offer early in the calendar year, but we will learn more about that after we consider all engagement around the 9% tax credits. Brandon, I see your question around the $200,000 extra, and that is a per project addition. So where your building itself has functional building design to meet your tenant population needs, then that would be, in terms of calculating the up to amount that you would be eligible for subsidy, that would be included at a building level. And let's see, what is OHTS a timeline for approval for each of the 3 stages? I think, we're going to be doing our soft launch test to make sure that we have our internal processes worked out. I think hoping that they, we're trying to respond to individual project times, so there won't be one time when we pull all projects to evaluate at the same pace. We'll be doing that as works with the development schedule for the projects. So the hope is that those are not protracted evaluation periods, but I will, as we are finalizing the delivery, we'll know a little bit more about that and going through the tests, and we'll have, I believe, in our kind of agreements, not to exceed time, but of course we'll hope to do that. Sarah, I see your question on the last gap resources. So that is part of, we have $30 million flagged on the for 2024 resources to address last gaps in projects. And so that will be launched, kind of available as we are getting the Orca online. And it's also obviously about projects that we already have in our pipeline and our production pipeline. So we'll be kind of sharing more information about that process. I do think working and prioritizing working through your production analyst is going to be the expedient path towards accessing those. And yes, Travis, the updated recommendation on subsidy limits are in the Housing Stability Council packet. As soon as those are approved, we'll be able to, we'll post those individually. Any other questions? And Team OHCS, other things that you would like to highlight or call out, please feel free to. We'll see. So as Diana, I'll take your question first. So the higher subsidy limits do absolutely reflect the feedback from the survey. There was a large mix of opinions around the survey. I think we're working on the summary version to be able to share. I think over at the end of the day, yes, I think there were some that said that they were plenty. More so that they were not plenty. And so I think that that was the range of there's a broad range of feedback and thoughts, and really we're trying to strike the balance here. These resources should not be exactly what works for all projects. So we want to find the projects that are really good fits for the resources that we have available. And right now, understand that those are gap only resources. We don't have tax credits. It will not work in all circumstances. We certainly want to be making sure that we are expanding production, giving certainty around the resources that we have available and how you can access them. And really hopefully not add more time to the development timeline because of the need to find other leverage, other sources that weren't, as the market shifts and all of that. We do want to make sure that we are prioritizing or encouraging and incentivizing leverage of private resources wherever possible, and that it won't always be possible. And so kind of trying to strike that balance. I think we had the survey data that came in, had a lot of conversations, a lot of great information shared, both with me and the team. We also have the information that folks are submitting through the project intake now, to really talk about the resource need for projects across the board. And I know those are continuing to roll in, but again, I think that those were a really good touch point and a good reflection, to feel like this is should end up with a lot of projects that are viable within these subsidy limits, but it probably will not fit all circumstances. And we do not, let's see, I see questions around, so our resources are not established to serve 80 to 120% AMI. So these are for low income, affordable, not in that middle income space. And so Lane, I see your question around the intake process. When do we get our production analysts and projects input into Orca? So that'll happen through the evaluation process. So the intake that you've submitted, that doesn't go to a production desk. That's really just broad asks for your pipelines. And then as you submit application materials to get connected with a with a yeah. So after the impact assessment is when you would be assigned a production analyst. Um, I see, let's see, Dan, Steffi, I see your question around the infrastructure loan program, and so we'll be doing outreach of that. That is specific. That will be launched through cities, so we'll be stood up. We will administer resources, but be providing the resources to the cities in most cases. Okay. And I think on income averaging, we don't have tax credits right now to offer, so we won't be looking to dig in on income averaging at this point, Kevin. I think to the tax credit questions broadly, I think again we need to go through the qualified allocation plan process. Our hope is that we are getting, in terms of the timeline, we're bringing our recommendations to Housing Stability Council this Friday. That should allow us to finalize the ORCA. We'll be going into the soft launch projects. And then once we are seeing how that goes, we'll make sure that we are then building out trainings and to have that all available before we are going live. And we will, yeah, Shelley will absolutely send out advisories. And I think I did not address earlier is that OHTC question, and those are, we're not doing scoring, so there would be, you know, a ability to leverage OHTC into our projects. Okay. Let's see. And then I guess the other recommendation being brought to Housing Stability Council is on our construction loan guarantee program. This is approving a framework to go out for as an RFA to be able to select a CDFI to administer the construction loan guarantee resources that had been invested in through legislative session. Mitch had previously introduced this item. I want to say back in January, so this is bringing it for a final recommendation. Any questions on the guarantee? Okay. Let's see. Shelley, I see your other question, the follow-up. I think I'm gonna, in terms of the timing, I think it will be before July. I think it's, you know, I think we have aspirations to have that opening in May, but I want to take seriously getting feedback and seeing the process of the soft test of applications, knowing that we want to be making sure that we're planning well. I think if, you know, team is working around it avidly, and I'm really optimistic, but again, want to make sure that we're not committing to a hard start date before we have done that testing. Okay, Brandon, I see your the follow-up on the having lift able to be leveraged into income averaging, and I do think as we figure out how we can be best using tax credits to generate units, that's part of the conversation I'm hopeful for within the low income housing tax credit QAP conversation, and then figuring out if there are programmatic pathways we need to prioritize as a response. Makes sense. Yes, so Jesse, the RFP for the RFA for the construction loan guarantee resources is And I think Mitch is on here. If there's anything you want to add about it, but it's looking for CDFI to operate the guarantee program.
Yeah, I think we're really close on having an RFA ready to go. That will have to go live and then receive applications from CDFIs, be scored, have a grant agreement agreed upon, and then the CDFI can begin standing up that program. So I would imagine late summer as an optimistic estimate for having the grant agreement in place, and then kind of depends on how the CDFI is going to administer the program, but hopefully shortly thereafter, I would say. So I would keep my eyes open. Short term, if you're a CDFI interested in the program, again, it's $20 million to implement and administer a construction loan guarantee fund. And if you're interested in accessing that, I think the fall is probably your best bet for time period for that.
Great, thanks, Mitch. Let's see. So Robin, yes, last month at Housing Stability Council, we shared the rationale for choosing the soft launch projects, largely projects that had very recently submitted applications that were not able to be funded, and or had submitted those applications several times. The idea of the soft launch is that we are testing things. So there's projects that's a range of projects, some you know, there might be a project that moves really fast. There might be projects that need to, go have supports going through. It's trying to test all of the different pieces of it. So it's just a kind of a broad representation. And then and Kevin, we have to go through the qualified allocation plan process. We are transitioning out of the competitive structure into the ORCA structure, so need to have those decisions made to be able to be solid on the timing of those. We have our private activity bond calendar for 24 full. We have great degree of interest in private activity bonds for 2025 already. I will continue to remain optimistic that we are able to find space to add more projects to 2025 than are currently in line for those. But first, we really do need to solve the qualified allocation plan, that process side for both 9% and 4% projects before we are able to do any of those things. I saw you come on screen. You want to question?
Yeah, it sounds like there's still a kind of a queue that is still waiting from previous applications. And I guess the big question is for projects that probably, I'm not speaking for myself alone, but others have already been trying to line up that would require tax credits to work. Then we could, it's not even sure that like, oh, in 2025, there will be an announcement that ORCA now has tax credits available. I was just wondering kind of I understand the QAP process, but presumably it'll all just go through the refined ORCA process as it evolves over the next year of using it and working on it and so forth. That at a certain point, a fund will be announced.
Yeah, I think if I'm going to look at my best guess at this point, is that yes, we will, so I think we need to go through the QAP process so we understand how private activity bonds and 4% integrates, and then we will integrate them. And so I think that is not I think what has happened when we had our gap resources that we allowed projects to leverage 4%, but wasn't tying it to PAB availability, and then PABs became constrained. So then we had a bunch of projects with gap resources and not the other resources to complete the mix. I think largely, and I think that the Metro bond investments that were counting on having private activity bonds, there's still a bunch of those waiting to be able to come through. And so it is trying to be very intentional moving forward that when we are giving you the gap financing, we're also holding those private activity bonds so you're not artificially behind. And so I do think that we will need to intentionally leverage available resources with private activity bonds to generate 4% tax credits, and that we would be putting those into our pipeline with commitments to them before they close. And so I do think that those will be timing. I do think it's just still wanting to make sure that we are integrating the when to that. And I think that needs to then be solved now through some part of a QAP bridge process into Orca. And so I think it is completely achievable. I think it is a little bit of a puzzle and will require some really good thought partnership. And so I'm excited to have us go into those conversations and figure that out. But so I do think it is, if you have projects that really are good fits for 4%, I think those are still good projects to work on. They won't be submitted when the Orca opens. And I think that's the primary part there for the what's coming next piece of all of that.
Just one final clarification, Natasha, and thank you for that explanation. That's extremely very helpful. The idea of bringing everything forward that we're looking at whatever place it's at, and getting the feedback on a project that you can only conclude needs tax credits in order to really work, and then parking it's sounding like not an option. It's like there's going to be a kind of announcement or a line that it's okay to bring projects that can't work without tax credits. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes. I think providing us awareness of it through the intake. So we have the intake open now where you're able to provide like your whole pipeline information.
Okay.
Yes. I think the part where we're saying submit it to be evaluated to get a conditional commitment letter through the impact assessment. No, let's wait until we know that we would have resources to commit to the project.
Okay, so go ahead and submit them, and
For
they
the
may not
intake,
be. Okay. So go ahead, just reveal all, and that'll help you plan.
Show
Okay.
it, because I think there's so many ways that intake information is going to be useful and helpful to us. One of it is actually seeing what's waiting to come in as soon as we have it, so that we can, are we going to be able to cover all of them? Do we need, what are the things? So I think getting them all on the radar so we understand. I think it really is going to be helpful for us being able to talk to the legislature around what do we think could be funded with new investments, and really get excitement around that, and have just real data to rely on in that on that hand.
Great. Thank you so much, Natasha. Appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question too, Kevin. I appreciate that. Natasha, what happens when you're over allocated on the Orca? What are the next steps after that?
I think we have more resources right now than we've had before. So I think it will take a while to get fully subscribed. I appreciate also at the same time the subsidy limits are higher. All of those, I think we will, I think we'll cross that bridge when it comes. But as we are holding projects accountable to being able to move through the development process, I think there's always the potential that a project that thought they were ready is no longer, will need to, so I think it's still worth doing, still making sure that you're getting your projects in there. And then hopefully as seasons go through, we'll be able to just add resources in as we receive them. So as we're thinking about the 2025 legislative session, as we get those resources, we won't necessarily need to do the stop it all and reopen it. We'll be able to just continue to operate it through.
Okay, great. And I may have misunderstood this, but so is the intake not open at this point? The thing that we got last week, was that just testing, or is it actually open?
That is open. So the intake is open. It's the evaluation of projects to receive funding is not open, but the intake where you tell us all of the projects, that is open.
Okay, got it.
And Jill, nice to see your name. I see your question about lift for acquisitions, and yes, we are, I believe we have pathways to be able to use lift for acquisition. We have put into the Housing Stability Council packet availability of resources underneath that general production figure to be able to do acquisitions of recently developed market projects. So this is not the ACK rehab type structure, but it's the where we want to be able to make sure that we can acquire market projects that are having struggles financially in the market, where we can convert those to affordable use. And so as we are getting the details of that landed, we'll make sure that we specifically are providing information about how that works and what that looks like. But again, with a housing crisis, wanting to make sure that we're securing as much affordable housing as possible. This is hopefully unique market situation and dynamics that we want to make sure we are able to leverage into that. Yeah. Okay. I see a bunch more questions. I think, David, I think transparency about the ORCA process is important, and we are going to practice a bunch of different things. There will be a dashboard that has all of the resources and the status of those resources when they are committed. We will be bringing projects in through Housing Stability Council to have clear, access and understanding of the information around those, and I think will certainly through all of the ORCA, both, our processes, our application, and our sharing back of information with you. I think we'll always be seeking to evaluate and understand where we need to change, or where we need to make some new strategy choices to meet the moment. Okay, and Matt, I see your question on the location criteria. I think I think very close to sharing a document on the location standards. I will see, I think, whether we can just share it here in the chat. I will, if we don't do that today, then I will make sure that we post that, and I can share that with you directly shortly. Okay, so I think before we run through the hour, I wanted to also, we sent a technical advisory out this week on the compliance standards for a bunch of programs that really needed new manuals. And I think I have Terry here to talk a little bit about that. Is that right, Terry?
Hello. Yeah, I'm here.
Hi, thank you. Would you
Hi,
mind just
Terry.
introducing yourself and just what the, high level, what was out there, and see what questions folk have?
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Natasha, for the opportunity to share some exciting news. I'm Terry Bradley. I'm a multifamily compliance analyst here in the Affordable Rental Housing Division, and been working, oh gosh, I think months, it seems like, really trying to bring some updates to the current home manual. And in the course of doing that, I'm pleased to share we now have also incorporated the National Housing Trust Fund program. Keep in mind, this is a federal program. It's not what we're used to seeing, as we commonly refer to as a housing trust, housing trust funds. This is a federal program, and it aligns well with our home program. And in addition to that manual, we also incorporated a really relatively new program made available from home. It's called the Home ARP. I think ARP stands for American, Recovery.
I think it's America Rescue Plan.
Thank you. There we go. And in addition to that, just so you know, we've got updated forms on the website, which is really exciting, that are relative for the Home ARP and the HTF and home. And currently we are working real hard at getting an elderly bond manual updated with ticks and forms for that, as well as our tax credit program. As we know, all of you have questions on HOTMA and Inspire. So real excited. So take a look. It's on the website, ready, just hot off the press. I think, unless anyone has a specific question, but I think the biggest clarity is understanding that the Housing Trust Fund is not state, it's a federal program, and it does, you know, seem real similar to the home program.
Great. Any questions around that?
I don't see any questions, Natasha.
No, I don't either. Thank you so much, Terry.
Thank you.
Awesome. Hey, any other questions? Elaine, your question. Yeah, okay, so Elaine, I see your question on risk and cost for co-location of affordable housing. I think we do have our care investment, which is going out through our third-party provider. And yeah, I think that's how we are. I guess we will be evaluating the projects and the challenges that that co-located projects have. Okay, so and the I'm getting a reping of the question around the 80% AMI question. The vast majority of our resources are Article 11Q lift resources, and those are eligible up to 60% AMI. Our GHAP resources do allow us to cover up to 80% AMI, and that is those are not resources that we have enough to make available for new production units. So it would be really overall, most of our resources are for 60%. I think if you have a specific question that you're wanting to get input on where you can provide the project, I would provide it in through the intake process and flag that you're needing to talk with a technical advisor for support. And you will get you don't get a production analyst out of the intake process. I think you can flag if you have questions, but that we will be providing, connecting to a project level technical advisor through after the impact assessment. And the subsidy limits, Travis, are not per source. They are per project. And Brandon, we are, it has been a thing that we're still working through the details on allowing the acquisition of new construction in the LIFT framework. That is something that's been built into the Housing Stability Council framework. Once approved, we'll be sharing more information about how that works. It is still Article 11Q bonds. We will still need to have operational controls. And there are a lot of different dynamics of market projects that will vary in terms of whether they're whether they're full, what is the unit turn, all of those types of strategies. So we'll be putting that together in the coming weeks. I see your hand, Travis.
Yeah, just a follow-up question on the subsidy limits. So I get that the caps are per project, but I'm wondering for the 2024 offerings that are going to be out there, are things like lift able to be stacked with like ag worker tax credits or OAHTC, the sort of, you know, if you're looking at the resources page, the ones that are in italics below the line.
Yes, you can, so layering those different kinds of money. So if, yeah, so you could put OHTC or credits or what have you stack into your capital stack, along with the Q bonds or otherwise. Okay, and Brian, I see, yeah, so I should probably not summarize lift operational control in one statement, but yes, it is still in first position. We still share first position with other primary lenders, and we have the updated lift documents, which document the controls that the two groups have, and navigated that with lenders in the last couple of years. Great. Okay. Well, in the absence of other questions, I think we can close this month's partner call. And we will be sharing more information as we navigate through Housing Stability Council and get closer to launching the ORCA, and be able to provide the contact information for everybody that you might be interested in connecting with. Thank you so much.